catch my breath now that you're not here. Oh, to take me in your arms and tell me all will be well. Since I last laid eyes on your baby, I've been living in hell, and I can't breathe. Said I can't eat. Ain't got no appetite.
Hello, welcome everybody. Lewis Marks here at the Ropeadope Room here in East Philadelphia, and today is Juneteenth. Many of us are just finding out what that's all about, and I think it's amazing. We're doing a few different things today. First off, Bandcamp has made this a Bandcamp holiday by donating all of their portion of proceeds of sales on Bandcamp to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and Ropeadope will be matching that and giving our share of revenue to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. So we urge you to go to downloads.ropeadope.com and browse this wonderful set of music and give what you can, buy what you can. I promise you won't be disappointed. Also want to point out that we're dropping a couple of live recordings that we found from the vault. DJ Logic live at the Knitting Factory. I believe that band, you'll see the lineup there, but the great John Fishman is involved in that process, so those of you who are fans, please check that out. Also, we have uncovered a massive super jam, the Ropeadope New Music Seminar at the Fox Theater in Boulder, Colorado, circa 2003, 2004, with Matt Heimovitz, Lyrics Born, all the Ropeadope crew on the road from back in the day. So enjoy that. We've set it at a low price, but we urge you to understand that whatever you pay will go 100% to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. I want to thank people for tuning in. What we're going to do now is have a little conversation about the social construct of race. Here's some stories. We're just sort of opening it up to Ropeadope artists to chat with each other and talk about this issue. I urge you to put your questions and comments into the chat on Facebook or on YouTube, and our team in remote safe locations will funnel those over to the artists and get you some info. So I'd like to introduce my 6 foot away partner in crime and introduce you to the Ropeadope Room. This is where it all happens, except during lockdown. So we're back. Fabian Brown.
Great to be here, Lewis.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
We're gonna jump right into the Zoom room. Yes.
We are. Let's make that happen.
I got to do a mic swap.
Okay, ladies and gents in the Zoom room, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got some thumbs up there.
Okay, nice. It's great. So I'm going to go to gallery view, and we have some amazing individuals in the room as always. We have Mr. Joe Pignato from Bright Dog Red, New York City. Joe, welcome to the call, and thanks so much for being here. We have Mr. David Whitman all the way from the left coast Just kidding. The West Side, as they say. David, San Diego, where you at, David? Not LA.
I'm in San Diego. Also,
San
that's
Diego.
Dr. David Whitman, but who's counting?
That's great. Congrats, Dr. David Whitman. We have Mr. Billy Polo. Billy, how you feeling today?
Good. Pretty good. Just unmuted. There we go.
Excellent. Billy, where are you calling in from today, Billy?
Brooklyn. Here in Brooklyn.
All right, Brooklyn. Love it. Gotta love it. We have Mr. Greg Spiro all the way from LA, I believe, right? You're in LA now?
In La La Land. Always with someone.
Greg, thanks for joining us in the call today. Really appreciate that. And of course, we have another Greg. We have Mr. Greg Dayton. Well, was New York City, but now replanted, I believe, also in LA, correct? Oh, do you hear me, Greg?
Yeah. Sorry.
Welcome. It's
Just
okay,
getting the headphones on.
Love it. No worries. And then, of course, we have Mr. Ben Matheson in the room with Ropeadope. We have Mr. Jason Miles coming in right now onto the Zoom line. We'll give Jason a second here to get set up. Great. Welcome. Ben, welcome. Lewis, obviously, thank you for a spot on the sofa. As usual, it's good to be back here at the Ropeadope room on Juneteenth.
Yeah, so in a little bit, we're going to have some folks coming in, and I want to leave the mic open to Black artists that I have personally spoken to and heard stories from a lot, their experiences, and we're gonna let them talk about it. This kind of sprung out of an idea. I was on Greg Spiro's show. He had a panel, and it was stunning to me that some of the folks in the room were telling their stories of encounters with police for the first time, and some of the others were hearing stories like that for the first time. And I don't think I'm particularly hyper informed, but I just kind of thought that everybody knew that this was a thing, right? And I think a lot of people are learning, and I think it's a great opportunity, hopefully, for people to be able to share those stories and for us all to learn. But I want to say, from my own perspective, and I did mention this on Greg's show, the process of understanding these things has been lifelong for me. I likened it to like peeling back layers of an onion. I learned, I think I was in elementary school, grade school, and some kid had a sing-song thing, the N-word in it, and and I came home and I was like, something's not right about this, and asked my folks. They're like, yep, no, it's not one you want to do. And I learned that, and then 10 years go by, and I have another experience, and I realize that I've taken things in. And then as I get into my adult years, honestly, the process, I'll fast forward, it comes to meeting Christian Scott Latunde Adjua. And it's funny, words are funny, right? So he'll come out in an interview and say, race is a social construct, So it's easy to go like, oh yeah, nod your head, but stop first and think what that means, and under all of it and everything that I had learned and the people that I had encounters with in my life, I never stopped to go to Wikipedia or the encyclopedia and find out that race doesn't exist. Right. So, and that, that's in my 50s. Right. So it's a process for me. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on that. If anybody wants to take the mic while we're waiting for Anu to come in.
I think I'll jump in real quick, if that's okay, guys. A couple new musicians are coming in the room too. Just want to say hello to Gordon Campbell. Want to say hello to Malumbo. Welcome to the call, guys. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. Everybody? Feeling great, Gordon. Feeling really good, man. Good. My experiences as a young child and as a young man is probably a little bit different than most people, and maybe even most Black Americans. I'm biracial, right? So my father is Black, born and raised in Tarboro, South Carolina, and my mother's from Puerto Rico. So I have a little bit of this and a little bit of that going on. So my experience as a kid growing up, it's really unique because, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, But I went to Catholic school, right? Because my parents didn't, feel like could make it and survive in, in public school, basically. So what I found in Catholic school was I wasn't black enough or I wasn't Hispanic enough. No matter what group of people I was in, I didn't make the cut, as they say, right? And as I grew up, I got into different types of communities, different types of vibes. Just growing up playing music, you kind of get to work with different people. And I got to say, I didn't have any really crazy experience with police officers. I didn't really have any crazy experiences with brutality on me personally. A lot of friends, a lot of experiencing a lot of things. But it's really real. Lewis, I remember a time actually coming back from an event that we had in New York City at the top of this year. As a matter of fact, we had a great time. Some of you guys in the room were actually there at that event. It was great to see and connect with all of you guys there in person. We get back here to good old South Jersey, East Philly. And I remember leaving Ropeadope after a phenomenal time. And in the town where our business is in,
Right across the street.
okay, okay, so just to paint a picture for everyone, I've been working in this town that Ropeadope headquarters has been. I've been working in this town for over a decade. Okay, I'm an established person in this community. I know the members of the police department, the members of Borough Hall. I know the community, people in the community. I have a nonprofit within this community. I as a musician, I record right down the street at a recording studio in this community. I've helped put murals up. I've helped fix broken water fountains and gazebos, and our nonprofit has paid money towards clock towers and the whole nine yards. Like, I'm literally, people would recognize my name here in this small community. That day that we returned back from New York, I'm leaving, and I come to a stop sign. I see two police officers in this community at the stop sign. They're just kind of hanging out, talking. Come to a complete stop. I drive by, and then the cop pulls up right behind me. Now, listen, maybe my hat was on too backwards. Maybe my car was too fancy. Maybe the tint was too dark. I don't know what it was, but I go past both of the cops. He pulls out behind me, and then he pulls me over.
You
So
text here.
Yeah. So,
and I replied, DWB?
DWB all day.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is in a community that I think that I've paid my dues and paid my time, and so I get pulled over, but instead of the police officer coming to the driver's side, okay, he comes over to the passenger side. Now, this is a town that probably has less than 10,000 people in it. The majority of the people that live in this town are not minorities. So he asks me to roll down my window, which I do. He says, roll down your back window as well. And for whatever reason, the cop didn't recognize me. Now, here's the kicker about this police officer. Okay. His father, I know extremely well. His father is a musician, played trumpet, was in the police force for 35 years before he retired. The guy who pulled me over, his grandfather was actually my band teacher in high school, my freshman year. So I've known the grandfather, I've known the father, and I just getting to know the son just through the police department, right? So I go, Frank, I shouldn't even say his name, but I go, dude, it's me, it's Fabian. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize it was you. I'm like, well, what's the problem? Oh man, well, you got tint on the windows. I just wanted to make sure, everything was okay. I'm like, is my tints too dark? Cause he's like, no, it's fine. I'm like, well, no, you got to really let me know, because if it's a problem, I'll go right. This is how I bought it, right? If it's a problem, I'll go and I'll get that fixed. No, it's fine. Just give me your license registration. I'll have you out of here. But the whole thing was just like, and again, that's a mild situation. But my point for sharing that story is, this is a town and a community that I thought that I was welcomed in, just based on my work ethic, just based on what I've contributed to the community. Like, up until that day, I felt safe in this community. From that day moving forward, I have doubts about what I'm doing here. So, and again, that's a mild situation to what's really going on in this world today. And you know, it's just scary for me being a father, you know, having children and having mixed kids, you know, and then just trying to teach them and educate them, you know, that the world that they live in is not set up for equality, or not set up for everyone to have the same experiences. And some of the things that they're going to experience, they're going to have to work a little bit harder to gain. And that's just how I feel. So that's my little 2 cents here. I also want to welcome into the room. We have David McMurray entering as well. We had Matt Steckler come in. We had Seth Trakey come in as well. We have Finn McGill. Dirty Dub is in the house. Welcome, everybody. Welcome here to the call. Really appreciate you making some time here for us.
Yeah, hello to, I think we lost Dave McMurray. I want to point out that, there you are.
I'm back. I think I am.
It's good to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
For those that don't know, David's first single from his new album, the Blacklight Collective album, hit today, and it's appropriately titled Freedom Day. So I don't know how that all lined up nicely. I don't think we knew at the time how much in everyone's mind day is going to be, but it's a beautiful track. We're going to play it at the end of this going out. Maybe Gordon, you know, we've had some conversations. Love to hear what you'd have to want to say here.
All right. First of all, hello, everybody. Sorry I was a couple minutes late. I didn't hear your very opening statement, but I heard what Fabian said. And in terms of stuff I've been through, it's so many things that I can't even remember all of them, honestly. But I do remember having a gun put to my face by a police officer, and I had to prove, and I was in school, I was in college, in the Fine Arts building at Howard University. Wow. And walking, I was practicing, we were doing the production of Dreamgirls. This is in the 90s. And yeah, I was going from my practice room where my drums were. I like probably left my drum thrown or something. I was going, you know, I had to bring it to the theater where we were rehearsing. And I'm walking down the hall, and it's after hours, so it wasn't a lot of students in there. And the cop just walks up and literally puts the gun in my face and tells me to freeze. And I'm like, yo, what, you know? And even when I told him I'm a student, I have a drum thrown in my hand, this is a drum seat, I'm a drummer, he didn't believe me. I had to go get one of the teachers to say, no, he's a student here. You know, and Howard University is predominantly Black school, even there, you know, I've had times, I mean, there's so many stories. I've been stopped. I live in LA, which is pretty liberal, but even every time I get stopped, the first question they ask is this your car? You know, I had not trying to floss, whatever. I had a Mercedes S-Class with stock. It wasn't no extra rims. It was whatever and they still would stop me. And the first thing they would say is this your car? I was like, I don't think that's the first question that you should be asking me. You should ask for license and registration. And on the registration, you'll see my name that matches my license to this car. So it's like, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's, which probably all of us here know, that it's systematic. It's from generations and generations of people that actually want to keep all of us down so they can remain in power and keep the money. So all of us, white and Black and other nationalities, are really pawns to the bigger picture. I don't even know if I should be saying this live on a Zoom, but they're using us to keep fighting between each other so they can do whatever they want to do way on top, you know. And in my travels touring all around the world, I remember I was in Switzerland with George Duke one time. This is way back. And I always would go out and just find a laundromat or find an Apple store, just anything. And I saw a mom, we were on a train, and the mom got off the train and a little kid ran up, their house was right there. And it really hit me. Like, most people in this world just want to live in peace. They just want to live in peace with their family, everybody to do good. What the problem is, the powers that be only thrive if we're always fighting each other. If we're always at each other's neck, we're being distracted. That's really a distraction to what's really going on in the bigger scheme of things. So I think a lot of times we don't know the history here in America, Blacks and whites, and we don't know a lot of things, because if we did, we would either try to shut it down because there's more of us than there are, you know, us than it is of them. Or, just that knowledge would help people understand that what we're fighting for makes no difference to them. It's really a waste of time, but it's so ingrained and really in the world, but definitely in America, it's so ingrained in us that we get distracted. We don't even see the real stuff that's really going on, So, but like I said, there's millions of stories. I'm going to say one more story and I'll shut up. One year I was out, this is 1993. I was on tour with a group called Shy. And my friend Chris Dave was playing with Mint Condition. So we're on Bourbon Street, just walking down, the guys in the band from Shy. And down the street, there's Mint Condition. There's Chris Dave, Stokely, all the guys. We're like literally walking to each other. So we start hanging out. And our hotel was in the French Quarter. Our tour buses were right there and everything. We pull up, we get to the hotel and we're standing outside and these cops pull up and they skid and they get out, get up against the car. It's Stokely, Chris Dave, me, a couple guys from my band, Raymond Angry, a couple other guys. And we're on the car like this. We're in front of our tour bus, in front of a nice hotel in the French Quarter. And Raymond Angry, for whatever reason, was like, man, we didn't do nothing. He's like going back and forth to the cops and we're all like, Raymond, just shut up. Just put your hands on the thing. And after we're telling Raymond to shut up, one of the cops was like, nah, let him keep talking. I got something for him. And he puts his hand on his gun, like he's about to pull his gun out. And once he saw that, that's when Raymond actually shut up. But we were literally doing, we were like, look, we're on tour. This is our hotel. These are our room key. Here, this is when we had keys for the tour bus. This is our key to the bus. Look, we're here. We're legitimate. It didn't matter to them. They were ready to shoot us off top. Just some guys standing in front of a hotel in the French Quarters for no reason. So that's just two of my stories where, that it happened, outside of just stores getting followed. I can go on forever. I'm gonna shut up. But I honestly think it's a bigger picture that all of us are being used as pawns. As long as we're fighting and hating each other, they can do whatever they want at the top. And we're all missing it.
I'd like to add to that. And I mean, there are a couple of ways to look at that from my perspective, but I think that it's safe enough to say that the root reasons are financial. It's about the money.
Money and power. That's it.
Well, the power brings more money and they work together.
Yep.
From DJ Logic in the Bronx. And also someone else just jumped in, but I think.
Yep, DJ Logic here. How y'all doing?
Hey.
Good to see you.
Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth to you as well.
All right.
And, okay.
Go ahead. Sorry. Who's talking?
Yeah, can you hear me, DJ Logic? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
First of all,
Fabian Brown.
yes, yes, sir. First of all, great to meet you, and thanks for participating and being here. The stories of you are infinite, my friend, absolutely infinite, and it's really a pleasure to get some time here. On such a significant day, I'm curious if you're open and willing to share any kind of stories or any kind of memories or experiences that you've had, as either a young man or even today, on what's happening and what you're experiencing in the world.
Oh, you mean my experience? It's always every day is experience. That's the start off right now. Every day is experience. You don't know what when you get up and walk out the door, right?
That's right.
Yeah, from was it Billy who was speaking before?
It was Gordon Campbell who was speaking right before you.
Yeah, Gordon Campbell. Yeah, just listening to his stories. Brought back some of the stories from my touring days. And these are stories you hear about, but you don't expect to experience. And like I've toured all over the world, and talked about racism and heard about racism and stuff like that. But me growing up in the Bronx and stuff, I never experienced in my neighborhood because we have so many different cultures. But the police definitely, they definitely showed some racism towards me. Just hanging out, going to the candy store on my block, and hanging out with my friends and stuff, and having a gun pointed at me for no reason, you know. So that was scary for me, and I was just hanging on the corner, you know. So it's like being at the wrong place at the wrong time, but being at the wrong place, but being at a place where I thought, you know, I'm just enjoying my time with my friends. We're not doing nothing, and nobody's acting disrespectful or violent. So it was just out of the blue thing that kind of caught me off guard that I can remember. And I can remember that to this day. And yeah, and then I remember going on a tour with Vernon Reed. It was I think it was Mask or Mistaken Identity, and we were up in Germany, some ski resort. And yeah, you know, you hear things about Germany and stuff like that, but you know, you hear about the white supremacists and so skinheads and stuff like that. But I never experienced it to that day. We toured up in the ski resort area, and they mentioned it, and I happened to go out to go have evening dinner with the bandmates, and as we were walking back, we ran into some skinheads, and you know, they just kind of threatened us, and you know, gave us, you know, their mouthful of whatever they were saying, because I didn't understand German, so I knew they were talking racist, you know. So, but you know, they didn't want us to be there, and we just, you know, we kind of went back and forth, you know, looking at each other, and but not provoking them, because they were on one side of the street and we were on the other side of the street, and you know, we probably matched in numbers in a way, you know, with the brothers. So, but that was a crazy experience, seeing that, you know, in Germany, and a place, you know, you're about to perform, and you know, you think you're going to be welcomed with open arms, but you know, you just get some type of situation like that. And as we got back to the venue, the tour manager who was with us, who was actually white, and I think he was Jewish too, and he actually got approached by them. You know, it's like they came on the bus, like they threatened him or something, and he was scared shitless, and he told us about it, and we told him that we ran into them as we were walking back to the venue, and I was like, wow, you know, and I was just like, oh, I couldn't believe it, you know, and you know, I was boiling hot, and then I was also upset as well, you know, everything in general. I was just pissed, and didn't think something like that I would, you know, would see. And but I, you know, like I said, you know, you hear about it and stuff, and yeah, those are the two things that really hit me.
Wow. You know, we all have different experiences, guys, and I appreciate you sharing yours. There's a couple of other individuals I would love to hear from. You know, David McMurray. Listen, again, just honored to have you here in the room, and
Oh, that's
and
great.
you know, just for you to be participating is great. I'm curious if you're willing and open enough to share any experiences that you may have had, you know, along your journey. You know, being a black man, being a musician.
Of course, it's many. I mean, my whole idea in doing that record, the Black Light Collector, was just the fact that when I was like 11 and 12 in Detroit, we had a unit called Stress. I don't even know what it meant, but what it to me was, it would be 4 cops, big beefy cops, just in the neighborhood in unmarked cars, and their job, they had unlimited, they can do whatever they want. And I remember at age 11 to 14, I was absolutely terrified of the police. And that's a strange feeling where, you know, when you look on TV and everybody, what do you want to be, a cop? And then I'm like, I'm terrified of the cops. I don't like them because of what I would see. And I remember in 1968, a great friend of mine You know, I'm a kid. He's a kid. We're in Horizons Upward Bound. We're both. You know, so we're the so-called kids who got the scholarship to go to school and everything. I remember looking in the paper, and my mother said, "Who is this?" A kid, two kids. He had a twin. They were walking home from school. They were just like me, terrified of the police. As soon as they saw the police, they took off running. Went through the alley. One went one way, one went the other way. Police caught them, put him in the car, 2 different cars, beat him, took him to jail, did not call his parents for like 3 days. And so they're looking for him. And then they finally let them know after 3 days that they had them. And needless to say, that would add some bitterness to your life. You know, I know these guys, and they actually ended up getting scarred, of course, forever. But they won a big suit out of the situation. It was just like that whole thing. And that brought about somewhat of a change for Detroit, because we got Mayor Coleman Young at the time, which was a big deal. His first big thing was to abolish stress. So when I recorded that record, I got a record called the Black Light Collective. And then I was going to do songs from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, songs of freedom. Because it hurt me that I heard a kid who was 11 years old say exactly what I said. That hurt me. I'm like, it is 2019 and you're afraid of the police and you have good reason to be. That hurt me. It made me cry just to think you actually still feel that. You shouldn't be, because I didn't. I mean, I know it's there, but I know how to deal with it. You as a kid, you should not be dealing with that. You should not have that fear. And that hurt me. That made me record the songs of freedom. And then in doing that, one of the songs I did was Freedom Day, which was Abby Lincoln and Max Roach. See, when those guys were doing those songs, music was spearheading the whole movement. Any movement that was made, it was being spearheaded by music.
Talk about it. Yep.
And those guys, I mean, it's different. You can do a song and then you do a song and you put it up and you go. When those guys were doing that music, they were putting their lives on the line. They were putting their careers on the line. They were just to do a song that was, a spiritual song or whatever. Just to do that, you're putting yourself in a bad position. I remember when I used to read about Lee Morgan, he demanded that the Tonight Show have Black musicians on their show. I'm a kid. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what he's talking about, but I know it's something. And I know when I turn on Tonight Show, I don't see any Black jazz acts, but he was putting his career on the line to say that, because he was going to get a backlash from the New York Union and everyone. So, I'm one of those, I'm a musician. I'm old now, but music is important. So, I mean, because everybody will have examples of this, just racism of all kinds. And it's worldwide, but we're in the United States, and that's what we deal with. And it's every day. It's every day. I'm recording some music and I had to write. It's hard to do some happy music when you're angry. Because right now, if I get on social media, I get angry immediately because it's always a new incident that I can look at of somebody else getting their foot on their neck or something else going down. And it's just like, wow, this is unending. Now I look at Facebook and I go, wow, that's a crazy incident, and I'm like, and I'll save it because I want to, and I try to tell people about it. I want to see how long it's going to get to the national media. And believe me, they all do. They'll get to the national media. And by the time they get there, it's hundreds more incidents in other places. And that incident, that happened a month ago. By the time it actually hits the national public, and it's thousands more, incidents that goes along. So it's endless.
I really appreciate you sharing that. As a quick note, we have a couple more musicians in the room. Just want to welcome Sean Martin, Paige Hamilton. Hopefully I'm not missing anyone, but welcome guys to the call. Appreciate your time and just being here with us. Mr. Sean Martin, I love to get your thoughts. I love to get your opinion. What's going on with you? How are you handling things? What are your experience coming up as a Black man or as a musician to what's going on today?
Hey, everybody, how y'all doing?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks for hopping on.
What up, Sean?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had lots of experiences, be that as it may. As a matter of fact, my sister reminded me of one experience that I had when I was a teenager, talking about, of course, the police and all of the above, and my parents, we had just moved to another neighborhood, we moved to, like the Jeffersons, we kind of moved on up just a little bit. And so police were drove by my house, and I was walking in the door. And so he stopped right in front of the house. He says, "You live here?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah. I as far as I know, I mean, this is where my oatmeal is. So I mean, this is exactly where I live." He was like, "Oh, okay," And so and not long after that, my mom and my sister went to the police station, which is right the street, and they were like, "Hey, that was basically a form of racial profiling." There's always been a thing, with African Americans and and the police, only really and truly because of the force of nature that the police basically exude. So there's always been a thing of the police have to be here to maintain, and I'm just gonna be honest, maintain Black people. So it's just one of those things where you have to grow up understanding when you get pulled over, put your hands on the steering wheel. Don't say this. Don't be so. Don't be this. Don't be this. Kind of do this. And there is it's time for change. And one of the reasons why I advocate so much for change at this point is because not all cops are bad cops. You know what I'm saying? Like not all police officers are bad police officers. It's like, like I know for as many bad ones that I know, and trust me, I grew up in Oak Cliff, Texas. It's a little hood now, but we got to know who everyone was.
Okay.
So I grew up in a town, and I grew up in an era where you knew everyone, and so we knew the good cops, and we knew the bad ones. And when I say bad ones, I mean the bad ones that were like, "Oh, y'all got a drug house over here? Keep me off 10%. I won't say nothing." Or that kind of stuff. So there was extortion going on. There was all kind of things going on, but it was one of those things where we knew everybody, and so we made it a point to find out who these people were, and that's how we screwed up, and so I think that at the end of the day, things that is really going to matter, especially when you start talking about reforming everything else. Like I say, there are great police officers who actually police situations, and they de-escalate things. When things get to a certain point, they know how to de-escalate them, But the problem is that I think the bad outweighs the good in social media or in the visual light. And so
That's true.
It's kind of like, it's one of those things where if one bad apple spoils the bunch, throw away the bunch and grow some more apples, And if those apples, if all those apples are bad, uproot the tree and plant another tree. One of the things that I have not liked, I'll say that, and I know it's bad English. One of the things that I haven't liked during this whole time, and in these conversations, everybody says, we want to chop down the tree of racism. We're going to chop it down. You can't chop down a tree. It's just going to grow right back. Uproot the tree. If you want to make real change, uproot the tree. Pull that I can't really cuss, but pull that from the roots and uproot the tree. Pull it all the way out the ground. And then either plant another one or plant something else in its place. The way nature works, plant nothing at all. Something will grow there. Might be mushroom. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? But the same token, it's like at the end of the day, you can't chop down the tree. You have to uproot it. There has to be a whole systematic worldwide thing.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Sean. I just want to make a comment on that point. Like, so in that analogy, the tree, a lot of people are focused, and I know everything has to take steps, right? So the
right.
Police department, let's defund the police, and that's a step. But when you talk about uprooting, like, it's rooted in our consciousness.
That's right.
Every consciousness. So that's you got to find the roots to pull them out. Because you can snap it off and there's still roots in the ground. It will still grow back. So, uproot is a great analogy, but I think it's like self-reflection within really deeply. And that's a message not for people here, because I think if you're here, that's part of what you're doing, but for people who are watching, and as I said on Greg's show, I'll mention it again. It's like you have to look at the things, for me, what I've done, and there's lots of work yet to do, but like, I ask myself, what do I believe? And if I say, well, this is something I believe, I ask myself, where did I learn that? And what I usually find out is I learned it from some television show or from a certain teacher. It wasn't really my thought or idea in the first place. It's not a belief. It's something that's taught. And you just unravel that to get to the root, then that's a process that I suggest. So,
yeah, absolutely. I've always said that charity starts at home. It's Bible. Charity starts at home. If charity starts at home, so does racism. You know what I'm saying? Like my mother was talking about a conversation that she had with a guy that she worked at GM with for a long time, and it was funny because the conversation was, my mom was saying, when I was growing up, we didn't sit at a table and talk about white people and their ills and all, and the things that, cause the social problems of the world. And her white counterpart said, we did. We talked about black folks and how lazy they were and how sorry they were. And then it was like, my mom was like, we never, like we didn't have time to talk about that because we were too busy trying to make a living. Like, we were too busy trying to do homework and make sure our kids had a proper education. At home, it starts on, or like Lewis said, when you see something on television, or and it's accepted for you to see it on television, because at home, when you're watching it on television and it's accepted to be on television, then it's okay. And at the end of the day, parents have to put on their panties, put on their drawers, and have an adult conversation and say, no, this is not okay. It doesn't matter what the media portrays. It doesn't matter. Like, this is still not okay. Like, you can't. Trust me, because there are so many other agendas that are out there that will say and protect the same way of thought, same way of thinking. So many, but at the end of the day, to say, yes, Lewis, you are absolutely correct, because there are so many avenues for people to find this way of thinking, and at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is, what do you talk about at your kitchen table?
Wow.
Hey, Lewis, can I say something?
Absolutely.
I agree 1000% with Sean. I also think, because I try to back away from the details, because we can get caught up in semantics and all that, and really look at the big picture. That's why I said we're pawns. But also, a lot of it is a lot of people don't understand what the real history is. They don't understand that it was set up like that. Once slavery was abolished, Jim Crow came. They did, basically, we were free labor. We set the economy for this country from the beginning. When we were let go, they didn't want to let us go because now they have to pay somebody to get the same job done. So they came up with more laws, Jim Crow laws, to get us anything we did, like not get off the curb when a white person walked by, to put us back in jail. The only thing that would make us slaves again was putting us in jail. So the whole setup from the very beginning needs to be uprooted. I think we're actually at that precipice now, because I've never seen a worldwide thing where everybody around the world, most protests I'm watching is more white people than black people. So I guess there's going to have to be a generation, where it changes. But what it made me think of when you're saying it start at the home is, if you think of the generations, this is what I go back to. I've seen pictures of black men hanging and the whole town standing around posing with black men hanging. So those generations haven't left.
After the church service.
After church service. So it's all based, a lot of it's based on Christianity. Right. So they didn't realize, because they were told a certain thing. I believe it's generations deep of hate and thinking that we're less than and not really understanding the truth. So even younger people now, I've had some people that I've been friends with for years saying some stuff right now, and I'm like, what? Like, they totally off, because I'm black and I was privy to some of the history that really happened. I understand why stuff is like it is, but a lot of people don't get it. So I think it's generations deep, and we have to figure out how to, it's almost gonna have to die out with like the new kid. Like, my daughter's 19. Most of her friends, white, black, Puerto Rican, no matter where they're from, they have a different outlook on life. So it's almost like that hate is gonna have to just die out with the generations, because it's like people, but a lot of people didn't even know what Juneteenth was until today. Our president thought it was the Emancipation Proclamation or something that I read. I'm like, no. Like, so if you don't know what the history is, you can have a bias. I mean, even black people, I have black friends that say I'm a recovering white supremacist, because all of us have been taught the same thing. Me as a black guy, if I see a black person back in the day, I might cross the street too, because I was told that black guys are bad, even though I'm black, because it was instilled in us generationally. So once you have the knowledge, then you got to try to teach everybody else, and hopefully those generations die out.
But
Can I chime in on something quick?
It's funny how it goes. I remember at one point before I went to Wayne State, I'm in high school. My brother was ahead of me, so he went to Wayne State, and it was like very militant. Everything was, all the newspapers had all this revolutionary stuff, and I was like, wow, I can't wait to get to school, get to Wayne State, and by the time I got there, it had calmed down a little bit. The papers changed. They got another editor in that wasn't as militant. By the time Detroit, I don't know what it was everywhere else, but I kind of think it was, by the time we got to the 80s, there was a lot of money flowing. And people got really kind of complacent at one point. I walked around, just looking at people's attitudes. They were like, well, I got mine. Like, I don't care about you. I mean, I got mine going. Y'all better get y'all together. I was like, wow, what happened? It's just 10 years, and I'm the 24-year-old. And I'm just looking at them like, wow, y'all not hungry no more. I mean, y'all not hungry like that. Y'all not hungry for us. You're hungry for me. I mean, my family, not hungry for us. And it generationally now, about 4 years ago, I started seeing young people, white kids, black kids, they seem kind of unhappy. Not just not like white kids seem like unhappy to me. Before, when I was growing up, first thing you wanted to do was get a car. That's the first thing you want to do. Now I look at kids now, they're like, I don't want a car. I'd rather just take an Uber. It's like, what? You don't even want it. You don't want the car. You don't want the responsibility. You don't want, and I think because that, whatever that attitude is, That's why when you see the marches, it's not only black people marching, it's everyone marching, because younger people, they have another attitude than their parents, even if they grew up with it. They have a different different attitude about
it.
They they're getting out there and they're marching and they understand it. Whereby their parents may have never seen it. I mean, when I would tell people, yeah, it's like, it's very subtle. And they go, what? I was like, well, when we walk into a store, I'm walking in the store with you, they looking at me. No, they're not. My friends used to say that. No, they're not looking at you. Yes, they are. They're looking at me, not you. But I said, it's cool. I'm used to it. I'm used to being the black guy with 10 white guys, because I'm a musician. I play with lots of different types of band. I'm used to that. But if you were in that position, I don't know if you would feel that way so much. And when you don't feel it like I'm feeling it. But now, kids actually can see it. I mean, when you look at the video and you look at the guy's foot on his neck and he's actually dead already, they might have never saw that before. They wouldn't even have believed that. That when you say, well, that guy he actually did it and he didn't even care that his foot was on his neck. No, he didn't care. This is the first time they actually got to see that. Like, see it. Like, wow. It's like, that's some uncaring shit. That's like, that is, it is a big thing. And that's why it's worldwide. It's bigger than I ever would. That was the straw to break the camel's back. So we'll see where it's going to lead.
Wow.
But
Wow, it's powerful. I want to also welcome in the room. We have a new son in the room. We have Adam Ahuja, Richard Bennett in the room. I want to acknowledge some comments and then get Billy Pole to say a couple of things on Facebook. I want to appreciate all you guys watching. Chain gangs, free labor, 13th Amendment. What the F? I have a history degree and taught for 20 years, and I just learned 2 days ago. I'm a recovering racist influenced by thousands of years of conditioning. The root is acknowledgement. Billy Polo, please share.
How's everybody doing?
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to touch on some of the things the brothers were saying before, even just on acknowledgement, like, and the subtleties of all this stuff. Like, I was, one of my artists. I work in reggae music, so this kind of thing is ground zero, pretty much, for what we're doing. And we had finished the session. Lewis knows the song. It's called "I Know." It's off of Quiz Flow's album, and it's a great song, great lyrics, just everything. Like, and it just puts everything in perspective. We're standing outside the studio. It's me and two of my guys. They're both from Trinidad. We're outside the studio, and all of a sudden I see a police van drive by. And we're just sitting there, and it's just it's like a shark in the water. You can just feel something's wrong. And we're standing there, and my Quiz and Soka are talking, and I just look up and I see the police, and I just see them looking out the window, and they're looking at the situation right here. And I haven't seen, like, the only time I've seen that much hate in somebody's eyes was in a movie, like, up until that point, and it was, it was pretty profound, because, like, they drove down the street, they came back, did the same thing. And I think the only reason they didn't do anything was because I was the white guy in there, and nobody's watching white guys. Everybody's watching black guys. And I think that's the only reason that they didn't stop anybody, and just, like, stop and frisk was going on at that time and stuff. But to what was profound to me was that, like, they, my two artists were just like, nah, this is just normal. Like, they didn't even notice it, because it's like, man, this is my everyday,
Right.
And that was just another, experience that was just like, well, like, the subtleties of it. Like, one of the things I think white people also, you're going to have to read and go some places in history that you might not be comfortable with to really learn about how deep this goes. Like, I remember reading How to Make a Slave by Willie Lynch, just to find out how far this whole government goes into the breaking of people, the dividing of people, the conditioning of people, and how to continue that. Because even in How to Make a Slave, Willie Lynch writes, these things, the slave masters, you must teach these to your wives and teach these to your children. So when you say you're teaching your children, you're talking about pass this information down to the generations. And that's why we're in the situation we're in with this whole thing, because white people, and I'm guilty of it myself, but I've been working on my conditioning for 35 years. And if you don't even know where this came from, if you don't even understand the root of it all, you ain't ever gonna uproot and burn that tree down. You're never gonna replace it. You're never gonna build anything new, because you're gonna be building on the same faulty structure that first house was built on. So it's important to learn about the history of all this stuff, because the only way to defeat your enemy is to know their plans.
I want to just kind of comment on that. Something came up for me the other day about the word privilege, right? And so much of this stuff is about stories and words and the way information is transmitted, right? As well as images now, right? Just a quick back comment on the imagery of seeing it on television and normalizing it, as Sean was talking about. I think it's quite obvious that they know that that's exactly what's happening. I mean, every police officer that we've seen knows the camera's on. Like, it doesn't change anything. It's just like kind of normalizing this behavior for the populace, right? So there's one thing we have to push out. But the word privilege, just a quick comment. There's a fear, because again, going back to things that Gordon was saying about the way that the capitalist system, the way the money and power system works. When you say somebody's privileged, people get afraid. They're like, well, you're going to take something away from me. I've worked hard, and so every white person in the United States has privilege, but I don't think anybody feels like they do. Right. So that's the kind of thing that just to anybody who's listening out there, it's like, it's okay. It's just okay to say, yes, this has been part of my life. I heard a statistic on NPR the other day that the average savings at the end of life of a white couple in the United States is $250,000. And the average savings of a black couple is $8,000. So there's like no ability to transfer wealth. And it's layers and layers of the GI Bill not being, there were 2 people in Texas that received money from the GI Bill. 2 black people, sorry. Right? Because it was all decided at a local level. So accumulating wealth and passing it down is what the American dream is all about. And we've all benefited from it. And so, but nobody's coming to take it away, right? It'll all work out. It's okay to just accept that fact. And sorry, don't want to take up time, but just want to throw that out there.
It's not because we're lazy. I'm just putting that out there. We work. We don't want a free handout. So that's the thing that they push. It's like, oh, you don't have to cut your lazy.
Right. Like, it's the guys
who work for free. 400 years.
The lazy ones. We know that. Sorry. I'll say hello to Anu's son. Welcome. You haven't had the microphone yet. I want to hand it over.
And I'm just enjoying the dialogue. Thanks for having me. Is there a particular question everybody's speaking on right now?
Well, I mean, I think we're just kind of sharing experiences and sharing stories from individuals' perspectives, right? So maybe you can, listen, as a black man growing up in the United States, as a touring musician, I'm sure that you've heard, you've seen, and you've experienced many things along your journey, whether it's through racism or police brutality. Maybe you can just share an experience that you have with the audience in that regard from your perspective.
Well, I mean, I've experienced racism through my entire life, to the point where it's been a long time since I've been scared of what, the repercussions of from, the establishment of what cops or whatever could do. First time a policeman pulled a gun on me, I was 14 years old. I mean, both my parents were Black Panthers. I'm from the West Coast, and Vegas to be exact. And like, my parents were instrumental in the free lunch program in the Black community in Vegas. And, this is before I was born, but, they actually firebomb my grandmother's house, you know what I mean, to try and break up the fact that they were feeding young Black kids in the community. You know, I played football in before I got to Arizona State, which at the time wasn't acknowledging the MLK holiday. I went to junior college in St. George, Utah, Mormontown, which was a super prejudiced town, you know. So that was my second time. That was my first time meeting of not a lynch mob, but a mob of white people looking to beat up some Black people. You know what I mean? They just didn't know when they ran up on me that I was right outside the football dorms. So, and all my homies came outside, and you know they was on the wrong end of that ass whooping that day. You know, you know, but I've been still with us. I've had that socially conscious and committed my commitment to the community since I was in high school from my parents. From being, my dad was not only a Panther and an athlete, he also ended up being a professor of Black Studies at UNLV. You know what I mean? So he did that, and so that instilled that quality in me. And I organized my first anti-gun violence march while I was in high school in Vegas, and we marched through the baddest neighborhood in Vegas. You know, and with crime. So the conviction is, I say that all to say that my conviction to the community and civil rights is strong. You know, and it's good to see that the millennials and the younger generation has finally had their call, their moment, to where they have something that they're standing up to. You know what I mean? Because I was worried for them for a minute. It seemed like they were kind of complacent, and they were kind of having that moment like, you know, everything is good now and we can do what everybody else does now. So they had their wake up call, and I commend the way in which they responded. You know what I mean? And I think right now we're in a transition mode where now as Gen Xers and our parents, we're going to have to come to the table and draft the legislation and everything that's going to be needed for police reform, the bills to make the rights and everything to level the table a little bit. So now, you know, we're in the first phase of this. This is the first battle of a long war. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's going to take a lot of work because the stronghold on racism in America is strong, you know, and the hate is deep. And it really comes down to an issue of classism, because now most of the white people down south who are protesting, not only were they taught hate for generations, but they also have economic issues where they feel like we're taking money out of their pockets. You know what I mean? So it's that money part of it as well that exists, which is not true. And Trump has them all believing that he's going to give them money, but he really gives two fucks about them too, but they just don't realize it. You know, he's using them, you know, but I ain't gonna get on my soapbox about that part of it, but I just think
preaching, Doc. You're preaching. You're preaching. Talk about it.
Yeah. Keep
but
going.
it just, I just say all that to say that, man, this is the first. This is a welcomed and long brewing tipping point. There's a battle that we're winning now, but it's just now we got to drive it home, and it's gonna take all our allies and everybody working together. You know, women in the Jewish community helped us in the civil rights movement. So now everybody's going to have to come together in this movement right here to drive this thing home. So now it's trying to get the legislation and the laws right. You know, next thing we got to do is vote, and you know, to drive this whole thing home and get it cracking the way we got to keep the pressure on their neck now. You know,
Right.
We can't beat them in the physical battle. So now we're doing a mental battle on them now, and we just got to keep applying that pressure on them.
Quick comment, break here to let people know who are watching that Bandcamp today is donating all of their portion of sales on their platform to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Ropeadope is doing the same. I believe that our team is posting Bandcamp links for each of the artists that are here in the room and more. You can go to the feed and click and check out this wonderful music and help this cause at the same time. And I also want to welcome, I saw, everybody moves around here, Lord Cecil in the room. I don't think he's had the microphone yet. So
no, I would love to. Thank you, Louis, for that. And Lord Cecil, thanks for being on here and being patient. I would love to hear from you on some of your experiences as a Black man, as a musician. You know, how does these times strike you, and do you have anything that you would like to share with us in regard to this?
Thank you for having me. Blessings, peace and blessings to everyone. This is amazing timeline that we're all experiencing. I grew up with a lot of the similar things that people have already, said. I went to high school, and first thing that I realized about generational understanding and history was that when I would walk the halls, the teachers themselves would come up to me and say, "Man, you're the son of Gaylord Young. He was the smartest man that ever walked these halls." During my father's time at the high school, he became the what was the high school president of the school. He was also involved in the Black Panther movement. So my father was in charge of literally getting together with his council on a weekly basis, and they would decide if there would even be school that week based upon the social, political, larger environment. And so I went 4 years to a high school where everyone would tell me, "Your father was the smartest guy I ever knew," based upon what was going on during that time. Circumstances would have it that I would end up living with an aunt who was also involved in the Black Panther movement, and in some ways, even today, she still is involved. She just returned from Africa, helping African women have the proper sanitary needs so that they would not have to leave school just to deal with those personal issues. So even to this day, there is still in my family even a long dedication to a deeper thing going on. I grew up also with a sister that we were kind of separated, and so she ended up moving to a section of Washington State where her experience was kind of the opposite, where she grew up in a middle school and a high school where the racism was rampant, and it was every day. It was getting your house A. It was getting pulled over and intimidated. There were fights. So my sister has a complete modern day understanding of these ill American concepts. For me, I feel like it was one of the reasons I left Seattle, Washington, was it felt like, hey, I could go around and fit in with a lot of bands, but and know the owners and know the people that would book the club. But as soon as I would ask for a gig, it was oh, we don't have any bookings. We're full. But I could come in anytime, and it was always okay to sit in with another band. So it became, a situation where, well, what am I just going to be a musician that just it's okay to sit in with other bands, but I can't get a gig in this town, in my own town? So there's I choose to focus on deeper, stronger threads of how to pitch my energy. I tend to focus on a more esoteric and exoteric way of viewing things, more from a center view rather than being polarized on either side, up and down, either way. But I agree that the new paradigm that we're on now is challenging all of the generations that are still here in this third dimension. We're all being challenged. So I would just say, for me, it's been about re-educating myself on a lot of things that I thought I knew, and thought that what I understood deeply, and going back and spending the time to do a lot of meditating on the issues as well. So that we bring together also the spiritual aspect of what's going on, the mental aspect of what's going on, the psychological, emotional aspect, and then funnel all of that down into a spiritual manifestation of action. And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
I think that's powerful. You know, guys, I'm just really taken away by all of your input and your experiences and your knowledge. You know, your pursuit to further gain your knowledge, your drive to, you know, for those of you guys who are watching this live, you know, I have a thread in front of me of countless of different books and podcasts and information that our group of panelists are sharing. And I know we're sharing it here live on the Facebook feed as well. You know, I got a message from David Whitman, who's in the room, who wanted to have a couple of minutes to share something from his experience. You know, David, can you give us some insight on what you were sharing with me in the chat?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, it's an honor to be able to. My goal here is to amplify some of the brilliant voices that I've heard speaking already. You know, Christian McBride said a few weeks ago, you know, he's not interested in what people say anymore. He's interested in action, in people that need to change their behaviors. He wants to see those behaviors change. You know, and there's been a lot of talk about problems, and I want to try to be part of the solution. And I feel like the solution, one key component, is all of us who know so much about white privilege speak about that and teach that to our white brothers and sisters that don't understand white privilege or believe that it's something that's real. I'm from a small town in Wisconsin that I went to school with mostly white people. My mother was fortunately a very open-minded kindergarten teacher, traveled around and taught about open-mindedness, and she came from a community, San Diego, California, one of the most diverse communities in the nation. And in Wisconsin, I was 14 years old and I thought the police were my friend. And throughout the course of my life, I have been someone who has been really a textbook example of white privilege. Meaning that I have something that benefits me that other groups of people don't have that benefits them, my whiteness. You know, I was 13, 12 years old, 13. I was at the parties. I was there. I was hanging out. When stuff was going down, I was there. And I had so many run-ins with the police, 20, 25, 30, and I don't have a single thing on my record. And, you know, I learned things at home, going back to what Sean Martin said. And I had this sheltered experience. And when the police saw me, you know, I knew everything somehow to do, de-escalate. And the culture, you know, I played music in black churches and white churches, because there are black churches and white churches, for those of my friends in Wisconsin who don't know this. And the things that are good and appropriate in those situations are not the same things that are good and appropriate in other people's homes and situations. And when people come to school young, and I've been a school teacher too, so I know a lot about white privilege in the classroom. Young children who come to school and they're black, they don't have the same schema going on in the background that the white children have and the teachers have, and the teachers are dealing with all of the bias that we've been talking about. They don't see a musical instrument, you know, they see a flower pot, you know, but I see a beautiful musical instrument, and that's the bias that's going in the classroom. And so those students, the white students, experience the white privilege, and the black students don't, and they're marginalized on a moment by moment basis and on a year by year basis. And I hope and pray that someday they'll be talking about the era of white privilege and how that was the healing era that transitioned into the era of equality, from the horrible history that we have trailing behind us. And the last thing I want to say is, if white people don't understand and agree and share that understanding that white privilege is a real thing and get specific about what it means and how it works and the generations of wealth and all of those things that happen, and we don't teach each other and our children, it's not going to change. And when we hear something at the water cooler at our, accountant job, some joke that's marginalizing another group of people, specifically Black people, we need to stand up and say something, because all of these wonderful musicians here are sharing these stories, but the people that need to fix it are the people that know those police officers that go to work with them. When those police officers say those things and make those comments, the 10 people that have heard them say those things and make those comments that are white, that look just like me and those police officers, you guys are the ones that need to speak up and say something. That's what needs to happen. Like, that needs to change. And I've been on the other side of that door. To all of you musicians in the room, I have a doctorate. I've attended 3 universities. I've worked jobs. I come from a place that's mostly white people, and I'm fortunate to have been, an open mind. It's been a family value that's deeply ingrained in me, and so I can see my own shortcomings, and I know that there are many. But really, I really want to be here to amplify the Black voice by speaking directly to my white brothers and sisters and telling them, that's got to change. We have to change. It's our behavior that's causing this problem, not their behavior, not the Black Lives Matter movement. That's it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. One of the things that came up for me personally after listening to you, a couple weeks back, I live in a small town called Collingswood, and I got approached by a woman, a phone call, and she asked me how I was doing, how I was holding up, and she was kind of being coy, and here she was a part of a committee that was trying to put together a march for my community. Okay, now she's a white woman, a few years older than me, but she had significant presence in the community and in our county, and she reached out to me and asked me if I would participate, but she was very careful in how she said that. She kind of just was straight and direct, and she says, "Hey, listen, I'm on a committee. It's for white women. It's definitely not what I want to go out with on supporting and planning a march. Are you interested?" And I was kind of thrown back a little bit. What am I, your token minority to play a part in your, in this thing? And I had to take a step back, because really at the source, what she was asking for help. She was asking for leadership. She was asking for something, what is it that we can do together as a community? And I guess my question to the room is, as we're coming to, to a few more minutes of this conversation, my question to the room is, what do you feel are the next steps? What can individuals in our community do to move the needle forward towards positivity, towards love, towards understanding, towards comprehension? What is it that we can do as individuals, and what can we ask of our community to do? Listening to Krishna Scott speak on it, his take, one of his takeaways that I got was, what people need to be is introspective right now. We need to look, in ourselves and really challenge our beliefs and, challenge our thoughts around how we got to this place. Right. But I'm asking the room, and I would love to hear anyone's comments on, what do you feel are the next constructive steps to take as a community of people?
Voting.
Okay.
Vote
first. Okay.
That's next up. Reform, reallocation of funds of these police, legislation to promote legitimate, civil rights to people. And I think education, I think it's like, now that we have the attention of our white friends and family, that now really go back and look at our history. It's easy for an agenda or an ideal of Black people being inferior or less smart to be promoted when you think our experience started with the slave experience here in America. You have to look at it that, Africa, the continent of Africa, the home of civilization. Everything started over there. You know what I mean? And then we also discount the Native Americans here. You know what I mean? And also the fact that we were here before slavery came. The Moors were already over here doing business with the Native Americans. So if you really look at the history of the Moors and them traveling and how they were emperors in other countries and everything before all this happening, before the slave experience here, chattel slavery being a brutal model of something that had pre-existed as just a labor model, you know, you'll understand it. Like you really had people here that were enslaved, that were kings in Africa. There were chiefs of tribes. They come from good lineage. You know what I mean? We weren't. So it's like really educating yourself on that aspect of things and looking deeper, diving deeper. You know, Columbus and his cronies would have starved to death if it wasn't for the Indians not the Indians, the Native Americans, the indigenous people when they came over here. You know, that Thanksgiving model is a horrible tale. You know what I mean? So it says you got to look deep. You got to dive deeper back into all that history.
If I could jump in,
please.
I hear that, amen, and I'm glad that you connected Native Americans. And I've had the good fortune of being able to work with some folks on different issues in that. I hear Christian, you know, the comment you made about Christian and introspection, and so I want to say to the audience, anyone's listening, is like, question everything. That's what that to me is what introspection is. Like, why do I believe what I believe? Where is this information coming from? Don't just grab a fact from the latest TV show or podcast that you watched. You know, do the deep dive. We posted some books here. I would also, I don't remember the title, but I'd recommend to people Ira Katz-Nelson, great historian who has documented a lot. But for me, you know, that's always been a starting point for me. But next steps, like, I'm almost 60 years old, so you know, and I have children. I'm definitely not running out to be at the protest, but I encourage and applaud everyone who is. There's a lot of parts to every army, so my method is I'm moving money to One United Bank. That's a place that people can do that. Move money to a Black-owned bank. Ask questions. It's not just about moving money or doing business with Black-owned businesses, although that's extremely constructive. The question is, which non-Black-owned businesses are you dealing with? You know, I got an email from a company that wanted to supply Ropeadope with supplies last week, and I replied very simply with an email. I was like, absolutely, would love to place an order with you. Please tell me about the net worth of your owners and what their political views are and whether or not they're racists. I didn't get a response, so I'm not going to buy from that company. It's pretty simple, right? Home Depot donated $7 billion to the Trump campaign. Lowe's committed a substantially larger sum than that to either the NAACP or some other charity, right? So you know, picking through this because money is what power people listen to, and when you move your money, I think that's one of the most powerful things. So that you know, we've always tried to do that, but we can do a lot better. You know, here at Ropeadope and in my personal life, so I recommend people think about that. And then, of course, the hard part of those conversations with family and friends. I guess, you know, I had a situation last week where someone said something about, you know, our history, you know, these monuments coming down, and it's just like, well, I stayed away from the conversation because I didn't want to lose my temper, you know, with my family. But I thought about it later, and you know, I'm going to send an email. Just be like, look, you know, this is the history of those, and really just, you know, I guess what I want to say to people who are panicking about this, you know, it's going to be okay. It's really okay. We're going to be a better culture if we just do some of these things and get with this movement, because this is where humanity has to go. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Please.
I just want to piggyback off of Anu and just double down on what he said. Education is key. The more educated you are and you know what's really going down, then your vote will be different. Everything, the way you move will be different, because you're like, wait a minute, that's fake. That's not true, what they said. So the more educated you are, I think everything in your life kind of takes a different toll, and you will vote differently, hopefully, you know. And if once you're educated and you still act the same way, then that's on you. Then you have to answer for that. But anybody that's human and has any kind of heart for people in general, I think the education will open their eyes to, like, you know, doing it. So just want to double what Anu was saying.
Does anyone have any other thoughts they'd like to contribute? I have another question, but I would like to see if anyone has any other thoughts.
I would say just be vigilant. You know, I think what David said and Lewis said is interesting, because me and Cecil often are listening to, you know, music from the late 60s and the early 70s. And the assumption all the artists have when you listen to the music is the same assumption we have, that once this generation dies away, these problems will all be gone. So I would say keep talking, keep the discussion going. You know, as David mentioned, people get complacent, you know, that's the problem. You know, keep the discussion going, because it's a big situation, you know what I mean? And voting is the most important thing. Again, you hear in this music in the late 60s, early 70s, a disappointment, basically, groups saying, maybe if you all came out and voted, you know, you wouldn't have this. And me and Cecil are always chuckling, going, oh, thank God these problems, you know, don't exist anymore. People are enlightened. You know, it's something to consider. I also thought what Lewis said is very important in terms of Blacks don't have the economic cushion whites do, however meager. But one of the urban contemporary artists I work for, who I don't want to drag into this, pointed out to me that Blacks were even denied the ladder of crime. Italians, Jews, many groups who came here benefited from crime because they couldn't get good jobs. So they had to do what they could do, you know? And then the goal is they all went out of it. If you ran a protection racket, your son became a lawyer, and then maybe your daughter married a congressman, you know? The idea was to get out of it. But, you know, look at how Black kids have been monitored always. Get into a fight, you go into jail. Imagine if Al Capone had been subject to that. Now, I'm not advocating for crime, but I'm just showing how just total this is. I mean, there's no, where do you know what I mean? Every other ethnic group coming here, I'm second generation American, benefited somewhat from, okay, you won't let me do this, you won't let me do that. What can I do? And this has been totally shut to a largely native to American, you know, many more generations than my people, you know what I mean? Like, no, you can't do what ethnic minorities have always been allowed to do. We'll stop you, you know what I mean? And not advocating for crime, but I think people just need to know just how total this has been, you know?
Deep.
And I am an optimistic fool. I think things will get better. I just urge everyone to stay optimistic, you know, don't get misled, and also start getting the argument more nuanced and higher up, because the police are employees at a shoe store. I have friends who are cops. I mean, you want to get the manager of the shoe store, you got to vote, you got to hold their heels to the fire. You know what I mean? You know, we've all been to establishments where everyone is polite and the place is efficient, and you know the management is good. They set the tone.
That's the truth. Thank you for that.
I think we're gonna wrap it up. I suppose I'd love to play this track. Unfortunately, the way our setup is, you're gonna have to listen to the feed as we go out with David McMurray's Freedom Day, which we saved for the end because it really is a reminder of, while we're having this deep conversation about the troubles, it is a joyous feeling song. So I'll leave the mic open, though, if anyone has anything to say before we wrap up. I want to make sure everyone's had an opportunity to speak if you want to. Okay. Just thank you all. I learn from this community every day, and I consider myself lucky and honored to be able to work with each and every one of you. It's clear to me that you are all in the direction that the rest of the world needs to head as far as understanding and community brotherhood. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Must be lying, can it really be? Can't conceive it, can't believe it, but that's what they say. Slave no longer, this is Freedom Day. Freedom Day, it's Freedom Day. Throw those shackles and chains away.